my son, go get it. Period.
Happy Monday to all of you. Welcome back for another episode of the JD Sports Show live on 12 Ounce Sports. Glad you're with us for another Monday afternoon. Glad you could be with us, with me, I should say. I guess I'm really I'm really the only one around, but glad that you could be with me today for another Monday here on the JD Sports Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Whether you're listening on 12OunceSportsRadioNetwork.com or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you may be listening, thank you for listening and welcome into the JD Sports Show. Whether you're a first-time listener, you've been back every week, glad you could be with me for another Monday. We had another weekend full of sports and another day tonight, full of sports and week full of sports as well. So lots to talk about coming up. All right, so let's talk about the maybe negative stuff. So I want to talk about my Lions first, and I always struggle kind of ranting at first because I know it's probably not the most fun thing to listen to, especially if you are a a person who could care less about the Lions or not a Detroit sports fan. But I just I'm passionate about it, and I do want to discuss it here on the show. So I want to talk about the Lions, who, if you don't know, they did lose to the Saints yesterday, 35-29. And it was another one of those games where you just kind of sat there and watched, and you wondered, how is Matt Patricia still the head coach of this team? And I said it last week when they beat the Cardinals that the team still didn't look great. and I still felt like Matt Patricia was not the answer. And I think a lot of people might have disagreed with me and said, be patient. Let's see after that win. But for those people, they probably never watched Lions football or haven't watched Matt Patricia in the Lions era, and don't understand that it's been the same way his whole time here. And it looked about as bad as ever. In fact, I said yesterday to one of my buddies, I think the Lions look as bad as they did when they went 0-16. And the difference between those two teams, this team has a lot of talent on the roster, and that team did not. It had Kelvin Johnson, and outside of that, there was really not a lot of talent. I mean, it wasn't. I'm not saying every player on the team was bad, but it had one elite player on it. This team has an elite quarterback, elite receiver, good lineman, really good players all around. That 0-16 team didn't know who its quarterback was. It didn't have franchise quarterback. It's what brought Matthew Stafford to Detroit was that 0-16 year. This team looks as bad as that 0-16 team did. And I don't care if they won't beat the Cardinals or not. They look just bad, if not even worse. And, Matt Patricia has never been, in my opinion, really good with words. I think he's always had, I think he maybe he just doesn't know how to say things or word things or whatever the case is. I don't know. But he just never seems to say the right things because it just hurt him. He's had former players come out and talk about his culture and about things he's said and done. And the reason I say that and bring that up is because yesterday after the loss, he said something that really, first of all, it has sparked a huge online revolt and from former players and and some of those who are now in the media, which I'll get to in a minute. But he said that, I'm not sure if I'm using the exact quote. I just want to he basically said that, he was asked basically, what do you think needs to be done? And he said that when he got here, there was a lot of work that needed to be done. Now, for those of you who maybe don't remember when he came in, the Lions, the two previous seasons went 9-7, and 2 years before that went 7-9 and 11-5. So 3 out of the 4 years before he came to Detroit, the Lions had winning records. Matt Patricia still has yet to have a winning record in Detroit, and he won't have one this year either. So that irked not only fans, because it was, including myself, who just thought that was so, ignorant to say, but it irked former players, and one of the most outspoken one has been former Lions backup quarterback Dan Orlovsky, who now works with ESPN. And I watched his rant this morning on the Keyshawn radio show, and I was just, because I can say what I want as a fan, but hearing it from a former player talk about it, I think was more of a, wow. I mean, if you didn't hear it, Dan Orlovsky basically said that the culture was not bad. They loved Jim Caldwell. They were winning. They felt good about it. They liked where they were going. The team was very close. They liked Jim Caldwell a lot. And that's basically everything that has not been said about the Matt Patricia era. I mean, we have heard several players leave Detroit and bash Matt Patricia. On Instagram this morning, Glover Quinn, former great safety of the Lions, who did play under Matt Patricia, but also played under Jim Caldwell, basically kind of threw shade at Matt Patricia as well, saying, no, that's ridiculous. And so, what frustrates me, and what I'm kind of getting to the point of all this is it frustrates me that we just haven't seemed to really care. It almost feels like ownership doesn't really care that much. I think Lions fans are some of the most passionate fans in sports. I mean, for a team, you would think that a team that has been so bad in its history would have such little following. Like the Jaguars do not have a great fan base. They don't have a lot of following. But and to be fair, another reason is Jacksonville doesn't have 4 great sports teams. It's not one of the biggest cities ever in the world like Detroit is. So That's all. But my point is, sometimes bad teams don't have great followings. And in every sport, there are bad teams that just don't have great fan bases. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay Rays, for instance, a team that has not had a terrible past, but just doesn't. I mean, they just have never had great crowds. I mean, in the postseason, when they went to the World Series, I mean, during that postseason run, they could barely fill out the stadium. Detroit, and truly, I truly mean this. Detroit this year, last year, even as bad as they were, they ended up being the worst team in baseball. Would have better attendance average than the Rays, who make the playoffs. But my point is just, the Lions are not that case. They have been a historically bad franchise since they existed, but the fan base is super strong. I mean, I've said this before. I feel like I would just love to see the Lions have a great year and a great postseason run, because I think it would be so awesome to witness the fans and the crowds, because it would be so sold out and so packed, and it would just be awesome to watch, because I know that they would do it because they do it when they're bad. It's just, it is what it is. And it's hard to think that I just don't feel like ownership has felt that way. Martha Ford had always, and William Clay Ford always, I felt like they acted like they cared, but I just never felt like they really did, because if they really cared, they would have done a lot of changes, and they just never have really put out the effort, I felt like, to give back what I think Lions fans and a lot of the players have given. Matthew Stafford has done everything he can his entire career and given everything he can to the franchise to try to be a winning team. And I just don't feel like they've given him always that same effort back. And I think if ownership really did, feel that way, Sheila Hamp Ford, who is the new owner, she took over from Martha, I would fire Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn this week during the bye week. The Lions have a bye week coming up. And if you really want to show that you want to change things around here, because, look, she said in the offseason that she was going to be harder on evaluations, and she wanted to see a winning team. Well, this team, and look, I'm not saying that firing Matt Patricia is going to help them win, because, it is what it is, right? I mean, the seasons were already, 4 weeks in. You're at that point now where it doesn't matter. But I think to send a message that you really do want to be hard and on evaluation, and show that you care, like you said you did, you would fire Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn this week and during the bye week. And I think regardless of when, I say when because I would hold, but if they do fire Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, this next round of hirings will be the most important hirings in Detroit Lion football history. For hopefully both GM and head coach, theoretically saying that they both get fired, because look, us Lions fans, we need to see that we care, and that the ownership feels that same way, because at least from, I don't speak for everybody, but I know that there's a lot of us who feel like ownership doesn't put in the effort or care that a lot of other owners do. So, my rant just basically today is just the fact that I think we need to see something from ownership that shows that they want, that this new regime under Sheila Hamp Ford wants to do what she said this offseason. And that starts by firing Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. And in my opinion, it should be this week, but it has to be by the end of this year regardless. Bob Quinn has had plenty of time to show that he could be a GM that could help us. He's failed both with roster and talent, and he's also failed by his head coach of hiring. He's the one that fired Jim Caldwell and hired Matt Patricia. Bob Quinn, Bob Quinn basically threw the chips all in when he did that. When he fired Jim Caldwell after going 9-7 2 years in a row and said that was not good enough, he basically, put himself in the, he can only really put himself in that fire of, we all heard him say that. So he is responsible. He was responsible for hiring a coach then that was better than 9. So if 9-7 wasn't good enough, which is what Bob Quinn said, then how is a guy that's barely won 10 games over 2.25 seasons good enough? First year I'll always give a coach a pass because I think your first year you've always got to do things differently. You've got to instill things, you've got to build things, but that's it. After that, you've got to start to show that you're making progress after your first year. And I think even if in the first year you want to see a little bit of something, at the end of a year, at the end of year one, you want to see progress. But after that first year, you don't get that pass from me anymore. You've got to show progress. And Matt Patricia got that year one pass from me, and especially I think maybe more so from him, and whether that was my fault or not, because I knew that he did want to instill a new mindset and a new defense and all that. But I have seen nothing different since he's got here. And so Matt Patricia to sit there and say I had a lot of work to do when I got here. Well, bud, the team went 9-7. They were winning. They were back-to-back years. They went 9-7. That Week 17 game, both times, was for the NFC North. You have not played a single meaningful game in Week 17 since you've been here. You won't this year either if you get there as head coach. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. It really is. There's really no other way around it. Other than it's a frustrating cycle that we as Lions fans go through every year. You build up this hope, you build up hope, and then it gets crushed from you. I didn't have a ton of hope this year. I felt like the team was maybe good. I felt like I was shooting for the stars. It felt like at 8-8, 9-7. I did predict them to go 9-7. And after that first week, I knew it was going to be this. It was the same old story. 3 times this year, and all 3 of their losses, Detroit's losses, they have had double-digit leads, and they have lost all 3 games. You are a defensive guru head coach, and you have blown 3 double-digit leads in 4 games. How is that possible? I mean, that's almost harder to do than come back 3 times. I mean, it's just ridiculous. In your 3rd year as head coach, you're a defensive guru. I'm using quotate defensive guru. And you have blown already in 4 games. You've blown already 3 times double-digit leads. 14-point lead over the Saints. 14-point lead over the Packers. And you had a double-digit lead in the 4th quarter against Chicago, and you blew all 3 of those games. I was watching the game with my mom Sunday, and we were watching the Saints and Lions games. And after they got that 14-0 lead, I said, how do we do it today? I texted my group chat. All right, so how are the Lions going to lose today? And what did the Saints do? They went and scored 35 unanswered points. I mean, come on. I mean, it is at the point now. It's laughable because it's the same stuff we've been watching forever, but it's a sad laughable, right? It's like, what else can I do besides laugh at this point? And I know there's a lot of other fans who feel the same way. And again, that's where like I said at the beginning, this team, I really believe this team feels about, not talent-wise, but the way they play, just about as bad as their own 16 team. So Matt Patricia, for you to say that you had a lot of work to do when you came in here is false, wrong, and it's covering your butt, to be PG. He's just trying to cover himself. He's trying to say, hey, no, don't forget that Hey, don't blame me, everybody. There was a lot of work to do when I walked in these doors. No, there wasn't. No, the team back-to-back years was a game away from winning the division and making playoffs. They did make the playoffs. One of those years they went in the wild card round. So don't sit there and say you had a lot of work to do. And I've said this before on the show, did I feel like Jim Caldwell was the right coach? No. And maybe I was wrong, but I never felt that way. I felt like we were always going to be 9-7, 9-7, 10-6. I felt like that's the ceiling for Jim. That was the ceiling for the Jim Caldwell. But I didn't say I wanted to go backwards. I didn't say I wanted to. I mean, I'll take 9-7 all day long over these 3-win, 4-win, 2-win seasons. Man, it's just it's aggravating. It's very frustrating. Really, there's not a lot to say. I know that not many people listen to this show are going to probably care, and I know that the right people who I'd like to speak to won't listen to this show. talking about Lions management and ownership, but I got to vent somewhere, and I appreciate anybody who's listening to listen to my vent and rant, and I know there are lots of other Lions fans out there who feel the same way, because I talk to them on a daily basis. I live with some. It's frustrating. There's really no two ways around it. It just feels like it's a circus at this point. I say this strongly. I 100% feel like that the Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn need to be fired during the bye week. And I know a lot of people would say, "What good that would that do?" I think, yeah, for this season, not much probably, but for the future, it means a lot because it shows as an ownership that you care. You feel frustrated as well. It's not like this is his first year or his second year. This is his third year, and we're actually feel like we're going backwards. Um, this team is lucky to not be 0-4. I wish they would have because I actually do think if they were 0-4, he probably would. I think there would be a really good chance they would be fired. I think that Arizona game may have saved them a bit of time. And another thing really quick, and this is something that has also been frustrating in the Matt Patricia era. How can you come off such a big win knowing, and Matt Patricia has to know that his job is on the line. How can you know that after coming off that win that you can come out so bad defensively? I mean, really quickly, last thing I want to say, I'll move on, about the Lions is their defense is so bad. I don't think their defense was even quite this bad when they went 0-16. I mean, it is abysmal. Uh, I don't. I've said it last week. I'm not going to harp on Jeff Okudah much because he's a rookie, but he has not looked good, and that could be scheme. And that's why I don't want to blame everything on the players because I think there's some really good talented players on the defense, but they have looked atrocious. So I don't know if that's scheme. It sure feels like it's got to be a lot to do with scheme. I mean, it usually is because again, there are some really good talented players, and that's why. I'm not going to harp on like Okudah and the rookie because yeah, he hasn't looked great, but hopefully that's just the learning ability, but also hopefully that's just maybe Matt Patricia not knowing him and playing scheme wrong. Okay, so yeah, not only Matt Patricia. By the way, I think what they need to do is completely clean up. There should not be one coaching staff member left. They need to completely clean out the executive in the front office and the coaching staff. They basically just need to completely restart and get all new, fresh faces in there. Everybody. Not just Matt Patricia. Everybody needs to go. Because it's at that point where we're at. We'll take a quick break here on the JD Sports Show. When we come back, we'll talk about week 4. We're also going to talk about the 2 Monday night games. And we're going to talk a little bit about postseason playoffs. So we'll be right back here on the JD Sports Show on 12 Ounce Sports.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
And welcome back to the JD Sports Show here on 12 Ounce Sports. Want to thank the official theme song of the JD Sports Show, Odyssey by Scorch, featuring Austin Tenick. You can go listen to Odyssey and more songs by Scorch on SoundCloud, so shout out to them for the official theme song, Odyssey. Thank you to our sponsor, the Fields Golf Course. Make sure to visit their website, thefieldsgolfcourse.com, now to book a tee time and for future availabilities. As we get down to the fall, make sure to go out there and get some golf in before golf season is over. And the Fields Golf Course located in Ithaca, Michigan. We've got sports pretty much back every day now, and if you want to support the 12 Ounce Sports team, there's an easy way to get in on the action. 12 Ounce Sports is going to hook you up with a crazy deal when you sign up and make your first deposit on mybookie.ag. When you make that first deposit on mybookie.ag, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000 when you punch in the promo code 12 Ounce Sports. That's 12OZ Sports, all caps, no spaces, when signing up on mybookie.ag to get your deposit matched up to $1,000. Remember, always gamble responsibly. Take a look at the week 3, or goodness, I keep calling it week 3. I have no idea. Let's take a look at the week 4 roundup. Thursday night, in the Battle of the Bulge, it was the Broncos and the Jets, 2 0-3 teams. I watched probably about, to be fair, probably about 20 minutes of that game. The Broncos did beat I watched that Sam Darnold run. The Broncos beat the Jets 37-28 in a battle of players and teams that not many people care about. But the Broncos do get their first win. And Vic Fangio was upset with Adam Gase, who is somehow also still head coach. By the way, as bad as Matt Patricia is, there are worse out there. Adam Gase probably being the worst head coach, maybe in the history of the game. Vic Fangio did not like what Adam Gase did, and told his players to get off the field, so they didn't even shake hands. So that was pretty interesting Thursday night. How about Joe Burrow and the Bengals? They finally get their first win, 33-25 over the Jaguars. Congratulations to Joe Burrow, who I think is going to be a star. I've said it before. Just got to build an offensive line around him. Probably give him another weapon or two, and get some defensive help. And obviously that's kind of duh, but I think Joe Burrow is a stud. I really do feel like they have something in Joe Burrow. I mean, this is a kid. Look, they had no preseason, very little offseason camp and stuff. And he's come in, and they should, first of all, they should have went to overtime against the Chargers, who would have known. They shouldn't have tied against Philadelphia. They could be 3-1 right now. Instead, they're 1-2-1. But, I mean, look, Joe Burrow has kept them in every game. The Browns beat the Cowboys 49-38. The Browns almost pulled the Falcons. The Cowboys almost came back. Dak Prescott did throw for 500 yards, but that's because they pretty much had to throw the entire game because, once again, the Cowboys' defense, which I think is worse than the Lions' defense. I think Dallas has the worst defense in the NFL. Gave up 49 more points to Cleveland, who is now 3-1. I'll be honest with you. I know probably Lions fans wouldn't agree with me. I'm happy for Cleveland. I'm happy for the Browns. I don't want them to win the Super Bowl or anything, but it's nice to see when a team that has had such abysmalness like the Lions actually kind of has some success. So good for the Browns. And you know what? Buddy asked a good question. Are the Browns good or are the Cowboys that bad? And to answer that question, I have no idea because I think I want to believe the Browns are decent, and I also want to believe the Cowboys aren't that bad. Their defense is, though. Their defense is atrocious. Saints beat the Lions 35-29. Don't let the score fool you. I mean, the Saints, I feel like, kind of gave up a little bit in the fourth quarter, and that score was a lot closer because the game really was not that close. Believe it or not, the Seahawks and the Dolphins had a bit of a fight. The Dolphins put up a good fight against Seattle, but Seattle did come out on top 31-23. Early season MVP candidate Russell Wilson, kind of a little off. For him, 360, 2 touchdowns. He did have a pick. Ryan Fitzpatrick on the other side, doing Fitz things, 315 yards, but did throw a couple of picks. The Seahawks remain undefeated. They go to 4-0. They'll have Minnesota come to town on Sunday Night Football this coming week. Just really quickly in that Seahawks thing, Russell Wilson, I think probably right now is my MVP favorite, but Mahomes and Josh Allen right there. In a really crazy back and forth game, the Buccaneers came out on top, and Tom Brady threw 5 touchdown passes to beat the Chargers 38-31. Justin Herbert looked phenomenal again. 290 yards passing, 3 touchdowns and a pick for Herbert. Brady did have a pick 6 in the game, but he also had 369 passing yards and 5 touchdowns to go with it. The Buccaneers are looking like what I expected them to look like. They're the favorites to win the South. I think the Saints are very unpredictable. I think they'll be better once they get Michael Thomas back, but I just don't know if I trust them yet. The Falcons are the Falcons. I'll tell you what, we'll get to them in a minute. The Panthers looking a lot better, but I still think the Buccaneers are the favorite to win that division now that they're starting to figure things out offensively. That defense looked a little bit suspect yesterday, but, by the way, Justin Herbert, I said this last week on the show, I really do think that Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow, the first 3 quarterbacks drafted in this past draft class, all have a chance to be really good. 2 of the 3, Herbert and Burrow, have already shown that they are going to be their team's franchise quarterback. Tua should get that shot soon, eventually. Baltimore, I don't really know why. I didn't hear much about this game yesterday. I guess probably because Baltimore kind of revamped themselves after a bad loss to the Chiefs. Beat down the Washington football team 31-17. Lamar Jackson looked like Lamar Jackson again. Had 193 passing yards, a couple of touchdowns, and a pick. He also ran for a 50-yard touchdown. So Lamar Jackson and the Ravens looking more like Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. But they have to start doing it against good competition. I mean, look, the last couple of years they've gotten to the playoffs. They've been knocked out the first time. I think Baltimore's a good team, but they've got to figure out ways to beat the good teams. The Panthers, as I mentioned, how about the Panthers? They've kind of started to look a lot better. Teddy Bridgewater and Matt Rule, first-year head coach. On the flip side of that, the Cardinals have now lost 2 in a row. So, by the way, Panthers beat the Arizona Cardinals 31-21. Kyler Murray looked fine. I mean, it wasn't Kyler. Last week you could probably blame the loss on Kyler Murray. He had 3 touchdown passes and 133 yards. He also had 78 yards rushing, but their defense was not very good. They gave up 31 points, and Teddy Bridgewater was really good, 276 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and a pick. And the Panthers have won 2 in a row. They're 2-2. The Cardinals are also 2-2. The Vikings finally won a game in a battle of 0-3 teams between the Texans and Vikings. The Vikings won 31-23, so the Texans are now 0-4. The Vikings are 1-3. Kirk Cousins probably had his best day this season, 260 passing yards and a touchdown. Deshaun Watson is not the problem in Houston. Another coach that might beat out Matt Patricia for worse is Bill O'Brien. He's a terrible coach. He's also technically their GM, which I've never really understood. I'm sure Texan fans would love to see him go, and I think he will. I mean, they're 0-4. But Deshaun Watson, the reason I say that, he has looked still really good. Look, the guy has very little help. He has no offensive line. He lost his best offensive weapon. He still threw 300 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Deshaun Watson, I hope people realize he is still a really, really good quarterback. And once he gets some help and a good coach around him, watch out. He's going to make his way back. The Rams beat the Giants in a bloody 17-9 game. There was also a brawl after the game between Jalen Ramsey and Golden Tate. Daniel Jones was driving down the field late, but he threw a pick. So the Giants didn't get a chance. They fall to 0-4. The Rams go to 3-1 in what was just kind of a brawly, kind of yucky game between the two teams. But City of New York doesn't have a win yet. The Giants and Jets are both 0-4. Although the Giants are a much better football team than the Jets. I mean, if they were to play each other, I would pick the Giants all day, every day. But depressive times in New York. The good thing they have the Yankees because they have yet to win a football game and professionally over there. The Colts beat the Bears 19-11. Nick Foles made his starting debut, and he was pretty meh. Didn't look like what he did against Atlanta, but that also shows you that Atlanta's defense is pretty bad. The Colts are quietly, 3-1. I watched a lot of that game yesterday. First time I was really able to watch a Colts game. That defense is pretty good. Phillip Rivers is okay. I mean, Phillip Rivers is going to be a guy that's going to put you in contention. He's going to give you a good game. 190 passing yards, a touchdown. He's always going to keep you in the game. But he's always had, it almost seemed like when he was in San Diego/LA, it seemed like he very rarely would have good defenses to go with him. That Colts defense is really good. They're 3-1, And outside of Tennessee, they don't really have any competition in the South because the Jaguars and Texans are pretty much out of it. So when they face the Titans, is could be when that division becomes what it's all about. But I like the Colts. Their defense is good. The Bears lost their first game, believe it or not. They're 3-1 somehow. That NFC North outside of Green Bay is bad. Don't look at the 3-1 record of the Chicago Bears. They should probably be 1-3, maybe even 0-4. But outside of Green Bay, who I think is going to walk easily to the NFC North this year, that division is bad. The Lions are atrocious. The Vikings are not that good. And I don't think the Bears are any better. So yeah, the Bills. How about the Buffalo Bills? I said Josh Allen MVP kind of early candidate. I still believe that. They won 30-23 over Las Vegas, who falls at 2-2. Josh Allen actually left the game for a little bit with a wrist injury. A lot of people were freaking out that could have, and that would have been really bad for Buffalo. He did come back in. He threw 288 passing yards, had a couple of touchdowns through the air. Also had two of them for rushing as well. Josh Allen, I think, right there with Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes for MVP. And then last night in Sunday Night Football, the Eagles finally got a win. They beat up and, well, actually, really, this was the battle of two of the most injured teams in the NFL, the Eagles and Niners. And the Eagles beat the 49ers 25-20. And believe it or not, for as bad as things have been in Philly, the 1-2-1 Philadelphia Eagles are the leader in the NFC East. That is how bad that is the worst division in football. But they are at 1-2-1 the division leaders in the NFC East. So as bad as things have been in Philadelphia, they are the leaders in the NFC East. And Carson Wentz had a beautiful pass to Travis Fulgham late in that game that won the game for them. Carson Wentz is not their problem. He's not played very well, and I think he'd be the first to admit. But he also has no help around him. He has no offensive line, no weapons. I mean, I bet most people couldn't even name a receiver from Philadelphia. Heck, when I just said Travis Fulgham, you probably went and Googled him, so you don't even know who that is. But Philadelphia still has work to do, and I still think Carson Wentz would admit he's probably still not playing as best as he could. Because of COVID, we now have two Monday night games tonight. By the way, Pittsburgh and Tennessee game was postponed because of the outbreak in Tennessee. We almost had two games. Cam Newton was tested positive. But that was it. So they're able to play tonight. Patriots and Chiefs, 7 o'clock on CBS. The Patriots are going to have to go with a backup quarterback. It sounds like Brian Hoyer is going to be the starter for the Patriots, which is not good news for the Patriots. And tough luck for the Patriots who, even with Cam Newton, I think probably I would have picked the Chiefs, but I think they would have had a really good chance with Cam Newton. Without him, probably unlikely the Patriots will win this game. I'll pick the Chiefs by 10. And then our originally scheduled Monday night game, which has been pushed back to 8:50 on ESPN, is the 0-3 Falcons against the 3-0 Packers. This will be a high-scoring game. I think both defenses are Atlanta's a really bad defense. Green Bay's kind of an average, maybe middle-of-the-road defense. And Atlanta's got a good offense. I mean, to be fair to the Falcons, they have not lost because of their offense. They have scored points. They just can't hold leads. So I'm going to say a high-scoring game, but I'll pick Green Bay by 10. I'll pick both the Chiefs and the Packers to win by 10 tonight. And that is your Week 4 NFL Roundup. Postseason baseball is going to get back to it tonight. The division series after a pretty crazy wild card round that knocked out some biggins, including the Minnesota Twins, the 3-seed Twins, and the 3-seed Cubs. Both were knocked out by the 6-seed Marlins and the 6-seed Astros. Tonight, Game 1 of the DS between the Astros and Athletics at 4 o'clock on TBS, and then the Yankees-Rays on TBS at 8 o'clock. I'm sticking, I had the Rays and Twins in the American League Championship Series. I'm going to go Rays and Athletics. Now, I'll tell you what, though. I hate it. I hate giving Astros benefit of the doubt, but they look pretty good. They're going to be tough to beat, but the Athletics played the Astros really well this year. They're division opponents, so they played each other a lot. So are the Rays and Yankees. Both the Rays and Athletics won the season series between each their division opponents. and I'm going to go Rays and Athletics to make it to the CS. And tomorrow, game ones of the NLDS, Marlins, Braves, Padres, Dodgers. I think Padres, Dodgers is probably going to be the most fun series of the four. I think Rays, Yankees would be pretty good too, but I'm really, man, the Dodgers beat the Padres this year, but the Padres always were in games. They were close, and they're such a fun team to watch. I love watching San Diego. I hope they beat the Dodgers, but I had the Dodgers going to the World Series. In fact, I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series. I'll stick to that. I'm going to go Dodgers, Braves in the NLCS. Yes, I'm picking the higher seeds in both. I know. But I'll tell you what, though, the Marlins, I was telling, I made the joke that I bet, kind of like the Eagles' offensive roster, I bet many people could not name more than a couple players from the Marlins' entire roster. I mean, they've flown under the radar all year. They don't have a lot of guys in the payroll. They just win. They just have won games. They have great young pitching, great young hitting. They're a sneaky team, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to pick the Braves or the Marlins. But I truly wouldn't be that shocked if the Marlins won because they seemingly find ways to win. They swept the Cubs. I mean, I thought the Cubs were going to be a team that I thought maybe even had a chance for the World Series, and the Cubs didn't even win a game against the Marlins. So I don't know. You watch out, Marlins could be pretty good. The Heat beat the Lakers 115 to 104 last night to give themselves a chance in the series. The Lakers still lead 2-1, but that win was huge. I really think that if the Heat wanted any chance at this series, they had to win last night. I think they knew it too. I watched some of that game, and it felt like watching the Heat, it looked like they knew they pretty much had to win that game last night. Like if they went down 3-0, I mean it would have been an almost impossible climb back. And winning that game was huge because now it gives them a real chance, I think. I still think the Lakers will win. I mean, I picked the Lakers in 6, but I think it gives the Heat some bit of at least, if anything, for themselves to feel like they can come back and win that series, to know that they can win and beat the Lakers. I mean, sometimes that's all you need. But I'm sure the Lakers are fine. They knew they probably weren't going to sweep the Heat. Heat's a good team. But that was a big game. That was a big game for the Heat. College football this past week, Oklahoma and Texas both lost. The Big 12 is in trouble. First of all, I would almost guarantee, unless a miracle happens, they will not have anybody in the playoffs this year. Now that Oklahoma has lost 2 games, and Texas won't make it. Oklahoma State maybe has an outside chance, but very unlikely. But boy, the Big 12 really bad. Look, they have not looked good this year. I mean, all the way back to the first week, they had upsets from Iowa State and Kansas State, both lost to, unranked lower opponents. Oklahoma's now lost twice. You got to wonder if, look, this is the first time that Lincoln Riley has not had a transfer quarterback. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts were all transfers. Spencer Rattler was the only true guy he recruited. And Spencer Rattler has not looked very good. You take away that first week of the season, and he has looked really rough. And so is Oklahoma. Tom Herman, and I saw a tweet yesterday that I little biasly liked. It said, why does Tom Herman not get the media critique that Jim Harbaugh does? And I don't understand it because I think Tom Herman has had just as high expectations and has failed those expectations just as much as Jim Harbaugh does. I will say one of the big differences, Tom Herman has beat his biggest rival, which would be Oklahoma. Jim Harbaugh is not. But still, I don't feel like Tom Herman gets the criticism that he should because the talent he has in Texas is far better than what they seem to always do every year. Take away that one Sugar Bowl, and what does Tom Herman really have? So, the Big 12 is in trouble. It always was kind of piggybacked by Oklahoma, who always got cooked in the playoffs, but at least they would get to the playoffs this year. They're not going to get to the playoffs unless a miracle happens. Big 10 will start up in a couple of weeks before the Big 10 starts up, but right now it's probably, I would say probably you're looking at Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, right in are probably the three locks right now to be in the college football playoff. But even Georgia has looked a little off. Alabama and Clemson have really been the only two teams that I think have looked great so far. Everybody else has been a little off, and I think it's a little unfair because of the odd off season that we've had. But yeah, those are the only two teams that I would say have actually looked great in their first two games. Meanwhile, everybody else, Georgia they were losing to Arkansas late. So even though I would say they're probably in there, um, it's still hard to really say. I think Ohio State, once the Big Ten starts up, is probably that fourth team you're looking at there. So probably Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, most likely are the four teams I would say that you would be looking at. So we'll see. We'll see when the Big Ten starts up. Ohio State really doesn't have a hard opponent week one, Nebraska, but week two will be their kind of now or never game against Penn State on Halloween. So we'll see. Big Ten though starting up pretty soon. So yeah, going to take another quick break, and we'll come back and wrap up the show here on the JD Sports Show. We'll be right back.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
And welcome back to the JD Sports Show here on 12 Ounce Sports. If you missed it earlier, I'm predicting that the Chiefs will beat the Patriots tonight by 10. I'm going to go 30-20 Chiefs over the Patriots. And then I also have the Packers winning by 10. I'm going to go 35. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go 35-24, so 11. So 35-24. I'm going to take the Packers tonight on Monday Night Football. Again, the Chiefs-Patriots will be at 7 o'clock on CBS. Don't forget that. And then the then the Packers-Falcons will be 8:55 over on ESPN. So kind of an oddity on Monday night because of the COVID situation. But, that's it. So I want to wrap up on that topic, the COVID-19 situation with the NFL. So, the good news is the first few weeks went really well, and I was actually stunned at how well they went. And then we had this outbreak with the Titans that, of course, ended up postponing the game because at last I saw, the Titans had 18 players. 18 players test and to 18 players and staff members test positive for COVID-19. That's the last number I read. And then late this past week, Cam Newton tested positive, and it looked like we were going to have 2 games postponed. Thankfully, Cam Newton was the only person that we knew of from that side, and Jordan Tomo from the Chiefs was the only player on that side that had it. But I read last night that there was discussions between coaches about shortening the season and playing the rest of the year in a NFL bubble to ensure that they could finish off a partial rest of the season so they wouldn't have this happen. Because you can't, look, Tennessee, you can get through it once, right? Because you can just flop your bye weeks. But if this happens to Tennessee again, per se, then what? You can't keep delaying these teams. So I just want to talk about that really quick. Again, coaches were discussing possibly playing 11 games total and finishing up the remaining 9. I think they said 8, in a bubble system like we've seen with NBA and hockey in an NFL bubble. Here's my thing with that. We have seen now how well it worked with hockey and how well it worked for NBA. To be fair, people will say, well, look how well it worked without the bubble with MLB, which, by the way, didn't work great, right? There were some outbreaks, but there's also there's actually no contact between persons in baseball. There is lots of contact between persons in NFL. So, it's a little bit different when you think of it that way. But my thought is this. I think the NFL got lucky with getting through 3 weeks before they really kind of had to face the music that we knew was going to come eventually. We just didn't know when. And again, like I said, each team can probably get away with it once realistically if they haven't had their bye, because you can switch. But now there's a lot of teams this week who have their byes, which means now so again, flipping the schedules around will become much more complicated after this point. So my thoughts on should the NFL do the bubbles, shorten the season a little bit and do an NFL bubble system. Well, I guess it's kind of put it this way. Do you want to make sure the NFL season finishes or not, or do you want to risk the NFL season finishing? And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, yeah, everybody's going to get, I'm not sitting here saying everybody's going to get COVID or anything like that. I'm just saying, and the NFL knew that not doing a bubble system was a risk. But if you do a said bubble system, you're going to get through the rest of the season. So you either have to accept playing a few less games, which I'm sure the players wouldn't mind because, that's a little bit less on their bodies. But for the fans, you'd have to accept playing less games. But you would also know that you're almost guaranteed to get through the season because they're going to go to the bubble. Or you play as normal, but you risk maybe your team, for instance, maybe your favorite team, having to forfeit a game because of the COVID. Because my thought would be this. If they can't reschedule the game, the team that caused the outbreak or had the outbreak would be the team that would have to forfeit. So, for instance, if we were going back to the Tennessee and Pittsburgh thing, Tennessee would have had to forfeit that game because they're the one that had the outbreak within their team. And that would be really big because the Titans would go from 3-0 to 3-1. And not only that, but what if coming down the line of the playoffs, they miss a game by one game. They miss playoffs by one game. And that one game was because of the COVID. So, I guess, it depends. How do you want to do it? Do you want to ensure you get through the rest, or do you want to risk your favorite team forfeiting? Here's my thoughts, or my opinion. As a Lions fan, I could care less because I know the Lions are going to do anything. So, from a Lions standpoint, don't care. But from an NFL standpoint, get in the bubble. Make sure you get the rest of the season through. Stop creating headaches for everybody. Also, it hurts the teams, and it hurts both teams, but it probably more so hurts the team that was okay. In this instance, Pittsburgh, who didn't have any problems and they were ready to play. Now they have to kind of reconfigure their schedule. They lose a bye week. They were going to have, it hurts the other team. And it eventually could hurt your favorite team for having to forfeit a game. So my opinion, get in the bubble. Get in the bubble. Scratch a couple games if you have to off. Make sure you finish the rest of the year, and let's watch some football. Now, I don't think that will happen unless we get another big outbreak or two. then I think we'll really start to hear real serious considerations of a bubble. So for now, that probably will be on standby. But I do think the NFL should, and probably is, getting together some sort of a bubble plan in case they have to go to it. And if they aren't, they should. They should be getting prepared for wherever they want to go to get ready for some sort of a bubble system. Because, look, it's a very real possibility this is going to happen again. And as well as they did, I think they managed it well this time. Again, as the season goes on and you don't have those bye weeks to fill it with and you don't have common areas where you can switch, it's going to become a lot more difficult. So they have to start to think now and to get ahead of it, and I'm sure they are, of creating some sort of a bubble or some sort of a system. Remember, even though baseball technically did not do a bubble system throughout the year, they are now. Starting with this division series, they're just going to be playing in 4 stadiums, 2 for the NL and 2 for the AL, and they will be living there for the rest of the playoffs until they get eliminated. So they are doing a bubble for the playoffs. Even baseball, who didn't through the regular season, is for the playoffs to ensure they get through the playoffs. And also another reason, you don't for baseball, you're going to play a lot more postseason games than NFL, but they just want to make sure teams are healthy because you would never want to see a team lose some of its best players in the postseason because of COVID and have to still play. So I love that the Major League Baseball did the bubble system for the playoffs. I think NFL probably should as well for the playoffs, but they may have to start considering it for the entire rest of the season as well. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, we don't get any more situations like that, but it's probably more likely than not. Thank you again for everybody listening today to the JD Sports Show on 12 Ounce Sports, whether you listen on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you and listen to. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to like my page, the JD Sports Show, over on Twitter, on Facebook, and the JD Show 12 Ounce over on Twitter, the JD Sports Show over on Facebook. Make sure to go follow the social media posts. Give me your thoughts on everything. I'll make sure to give a pull off tonight. Who you got? Chiefs-Patriots game. I'll make sure to see what your thoughts. Make sure to always interact with me. I always enjoy it. Thank you again for everybody who listened today. I will see you all again next Monday.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.